Hello. I know. I wish. Have to obviously recuse myself from 8 Forester. Let me. Stephen is asking for the link. Let me.
Hello.
Hi. Hi there.
Hello.
I like your background, Kim.
Oh, thank you. I wish I was there.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Canada. Yeah, we don't have that much water here ever.
We got a fair share today.
Yeah, not nearly enough.
Hi there.
Okay, looks like we got everybody.
Stephen.
Hey, Stephen. Just waiting for the hi sign from Napa TV to tell us that we are live, and then we can go.
Okay. That was weird. My the link that you sent me in my email was blank. I could see the preview of the message, but when I clicked on it, there wasn't anything in it.
Invite, that happens. But if it was Outlook, I'm not sure why.
Yeah, it was the preview. The message was sent via email. Okay, are we on?
We are now live.
Okay, we can get started. I will call the Tuesday, March 9, 2021 ZDRB meeting to order. Staff, if you would be so kind as to do the roll call.
Yes. Chair Zagorczyk.
Here.
Member Pena. Member Pena, I don't think I heard you on that one.
Sure.
Oh, there we go. All right.
You made a sound.
Vice Chair Miller.
Here.
Member Jordan.
Here.
Member Cook.
Here.
Okay. For the record, let it shown that all members of the ZDRB are present. We will move on to the pledge. So if we could stand and pledge together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to ask if anyone has anything to add to the agenda. We have 3 items.
I do not. We'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay.
I second it.
All in favor? Motion to adopt the agenda. It is being
Aye.
adopted. Aye. And we don't remember if we got minutes of the meeting included. I don't believe so. So I will pass on making a motion to adopt the minutes until they arrive. Okay, and then I believe at this time we have not opened the Zoom to the public yet. So I won't open public comment. Do we still need to let people in?
I will go ahead and let the first applicants in if we are ready for that.
Okay, well, I'm assuming that the public comment period is less applicable given the sequential nature of it. So yes, why don't we go ahead?
And the first item is Starkey Street.
Yes, it
That's
is.
correct.
So I need to recuse. I will be back after this.
How will you
particular-
know when to be back? Can you,
So, Stephen, I can place you into the waiting room and I'll readmit you when this item is over.
Okay, great.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Applies to me, Daniel.
and Daniel, is it really just the first applicant for the first agenda item, or is it everybody in sequence?
I'm texting you something. I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Just to confirm, because we have multiple agenda items, is it really only the first applicant who's joining the Zoom, or is it all three at once?
It will just be the first applicant and I'll let in the others as their item arrives.
Okay.
Okay. Just give me 1 second here. Share my screen. Sorry, let me. 1 second. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Okay.
It looks like the applicants have joined, so we can proceed. Yes, Daniel?
Okay, sounds good. So the first item tonight for your review is the design review for 2150 Starkey Avenue. This has been continued from the last meeting with revised plans. At the February ZDRB meeting, board members had noted several design elements that prevented them from approving the project as proposed. These were centered around massing concerns with the cantilevered room over the garage drive, as well as concerns that the masonry heavy design was not compatible with the neighborhood's existing residences. The applicant has submitted revised plans which significantly address these concerns. First and most importantly, you can see in these revised elevations that the cantilevering has been removed, replaced with columns that support that second floor. And this addresses a lot of the concerns around the massing and the breakout design that was identified earlier, since you no longer have that sort of floating element, which was not in existence in the neighborhood. Here is a second revised elevation. Additionally, the brick masonry has been reduced and could now be considered a minor architectural element. We were provided calculations showing that it only comprises 12% of the street-facing facade. There was a minor grammatical mistake in the staff report. The 12% refers to the masonry and not the wood siding. So at 12%, that is a pretty minor element. I have some revised renderings here as well. And the massing has also been mitigated by reducing other elements, like trimming back the roof line and moving the vertical wood louvers from the larger window at the master bath over to the master bedroom window, which is smaller and placed higher up. There is one small correction I'd like to make to the staff report. It lists that the total plate height has been reduced 2 inches and total building height has been reduced 11 inches. In fact, there was no change to the height measurement, and that was just a mistake. And so all design ordinance standards, like last time, continue to be met for this project, including floor area ratio, setbacks, building and plate height, building orientation, and building elements on the primary facade. We've received no public comment on this item yet. And you can find the revised development standard table in the staff report, and you can see that the development standards continue to be met. We have provided potential proposed findings for this project if the board so finds at this meeting. And with that, I'll turn it over back to the board for discussion or for staff questions.
Right. Yeah. So just as a reminder to the applicants or the architect, if he's joined, that we will just mainly focus our questions to staff. So if you could just hold back on responding for the first wave, it's really for us to clarify what staff has presented. So I'll just kindly request that you stay muted, at which point then we'll definitely look forward to hearing from you, given that this was an ongoing review process. So
Michael, could I don't want to interrupt you. Jared, I guess, is trying to get on. I don't know if there's some technical issues, but he can't get on. So.
Oh yes, let him in 1 second.
Okay. Sorry, Michael. And then I'm sure we'll have there's a point for us to comment when you guys advise, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you, Jake. Appreciate you clarifying that, and definitely want to have Jared joining us since he was central to us. So happy to have him. Yeah, so we'll clarify with staff, and then we'll definitely look forward to hearing from you and from Jared and just seeing how things are progressing. So with that, I will start questions. Member Pina, do you want to start with any staff questions?
Sure. I was confused about the brick. Because on the rendering that I have with the new package that was delivered to us, it looked to me like the brick was the same on the lower level as it had been before, with the exception of course, the pillars for the cantilevered portion. So I'm curious as to when it said there was just a brick facade around the entry, on the rendering I'm looking at, it's across the whole front portion of the lower level. So could you clarify that for us, please?
Yeah, so the masonry was reduced. It originally did go up to the second floor. You are correct that it is, that these renderings are showing it wrapping the entire lower facade of that first floor. So I would defer to Jared on this one if that is the case, because in the descriptions it did sound like that had been reduced. So I would defer to Jared on that question.
All right, thank you, Daniel. And the other question is there any kind of a back wall or a separation on the back of the carport? It's difficult to tell when you're looking at the renderings if there's anything.
No, there's not. It can pass through to the rear of the residence.
Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Member Pina. Member Jordan, any questions for staff?
He's recused.
Oh, they both, oh, I'm so sorry. They both departed. That's probably why he, I now remember it's just the three of us. Member Cook, questions?
Yes, am I unmuted now?
You are, yes.
Okay. My only question for staff, other than the remaining excessive brick, is are there any, there have got to be some kind of restrictions and standards for the escape hatch from the basement levels. One goes out the back and one goes out the front and comes up on the front porch. And then the front porch is drawn with furniture on the front porch, which would be inevitable. It's a front porch. So how is that monitored that there's not furniture on the escape hatch?
That's a great question. I'm going to have to defer to Sandra on this, as I haven't dealt with this sort of escape hatch before.
I don't think anybody has. Okay.
So that is a building permit issue, and it's something that would be reviewed during plan check to make sure that it meets the code requirements for egress When it comes to keeping them open and accessible, it is at the honor of the property owner. We don't go and do inspections or check that, but they should be designed in a way to prevent obstructions, preventing egress.
But it's designed, it comes up right in the middle of the front porch. So that is not designed, that's designed in a way that will definitely have furniture on it.
We'll ask the applicant to address that.
Okay. Okay, that was my only question for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Cook. I do have a few questions of staff. So if we're if we're not seeing the renderings accurately portraying the revised design, did you look at different renderings that are not present in the packet?
So I was basing this off of the elevations rather than the renderings, since those are really just less technical. So the elevations are correct. I know that those are accurate and up to date. And again, I guess I'll just have to ask Jared to maybe weigh in on whether this rendering is the accurate and up to date one.
Okay. I was mainly curious because I think we all, I think speaking for my fellow members, felt that staff had done a thorough job identifying some of the concerns with the original design. Subsequently, you've concluded that the applicant has submitted revised plans which significantly address these concerns, such that you have removed any remaining concerns. I was just hoping if we could just spend not too long, just a minute, kind of going through why you felt that was the case, just so that we have the benefit of your thinking on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a design ordinance standard point of view, what the applicants did here did go far enough, in my opinion, to remove that breakout element and reduce some of the overall massing. I can also, there's one slide that I failed to show you here, which is the house in context with the other houses in the neighborhood. So providing this sort of context, additionally responding to those complaints about the cantilevered section, which was really the primary driver of defining this as a breakout design. We felt that these changes really did reduce the concerns to really a question for the ZDRB, whether this went far enough, because at a staff level, at a technical level, we thought it did meet those requirements.
Okay.
May I share just an additional thought too?
Yes, please.
So the heaviness and the cantilevering we felt was substantially improved with the carport design. However, I do have to say that when we met with the architect, Daniel and I were under the impression that the brick was being confined to really the entry alcove, and we both felt that that really was consistent with the design guidelines to use that as a more minor accent element. So I apologize that we have these renderings before you that show more brick. There may have been a revision in between our meeting with him and the final the product that wasn't really clear to us. And so I think that's something we do very much want clarification from the architect and or our property owner.
Mm-hmm. Member Cook, did you have a question? I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, thank you, because the renderings do still show, when you see the side, the west elevation does still show all the brick going down the side of the carport, the side of the house that's visible on the second of the renderings too. So we'll speak with the applicants, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just to summarize what the three design elements that we're calling back to our previous review was the cantilevered portion of the house, the massing based on the effect of the cantilever, but also the orientation, and then the use of brick, which was out of character for the neighborhood. So those I would submit as the three main criteria that should be in question and hopefully are fully addressed. With that, if there's no more questions of staff, very happily turn it over to the applicants and the architect, whoever might want to go first. I think there's some open items on the design.
Well, I just wanted to start off before I give it over to Jared. You know, we're excited about the amount of time and changes we put into the home, and appreciate your guys' feedback from the last meeting. You know, I think in working with the local architect, Jared, you know, there's been hours upon hours into a home that we really feel that met the criteria for the neighborhood. And, you know, as we bought this house, we took about, before we closed escrow, we took 5 dumps, truckloads of trash out of the home to try to improve the neighborhood. We've had pest control in there. It looked like transits were living all over the property. And I just would, you know, hope the board can look at the design and know that, you know, maybe it's not ideally exactly how you all would want it, but if it fits the neighborhood and, you know, as we dump, you know, a lot of time, effort, and probably spend $1.5 million to $2 million on this home, I hope, you know, you can see the value it'll bring to the neighborhood. And I think we've done a heck of a job. And I hope, you know, maybe it's not the exact home that you guys would build, but we all have different tastes, right? And if we met the neighborhood's demands, and I believe we can bring value. I mean, the house is the footprint, I think, is about 600 square feet. So I know the rendering, when you look at it up close, it may look different, but I think the footprint of the house is about 600 square feet. So, you know, I know the stone, I know Jared will have the answers, the percentages, but it's some pretty small amount of stone when you got a 600 square foot house footprint here that we're working off of. And, you know, I just hope you guys, we can answer your questions adequately and we can get approval to move forward and try to improve the neighborhood. Cause boy, we put a lot of time and effort in this, and I'm excited about moving forward. So with that said, I'll pass it over to Jared, and I think he can answer your questions appropriately.
Thank you, Jake. Daniel, could I have the screen? I'm going to share just a few exhibits here.
Go for it, Jared.
Oh, thank you. All right, so we've spent a little bit more time trying to provide some context of the street front, and as you saw on the street elevation here, I thought it was important to show approximately the ridge height of the adjacent neighbors. So on the right-hand side, we have approximately 28 foot ridge height. The house that's proposed in front of you is approximately 23 feet. The line up above here represents the 28-foot height limitation. And just for context, kind of skipping one house over, the 6702 Washington Street, the trellis that's closest to the 2150 Starkey is approximately 21'6". So I thought that helped kind of give some proportion or some context of what the size of this home is. I think that one of the disadvantages that the renderings previously showed was the close-up to try and give you a perspective of the materials, but possibly skewed the proportion of the house overall. The next one is the renderings that we've updated. So I went out early in the morning, took a wider angle view, again, to show the context of the adjacent homes. And I think that helps kind of give a better proportion of what the house that's in front of you that's proposed relative to the neighborhood. As far as materials, the renderings are accurate, as well as the elevations. We've gone through multiple iterations and stuff. And if kind of the context of the photo up above shows what we currently have, and then what's proposed. And some of the modifications that you'll see when we get into the details here is that all of the brick was removed on the east side. So that was a significant reduction in brick. And then we eliminated this brick mold. Let me highlight that. So previously there was a brick mold right underneath of the sill of the windows. And that was the delineating line for the brick that we originally submitted. And then in addition to that, that you can see a horizontal line that's directly above the 8-foot doors here. So we've also carried that trim piece around horizontally. And that's the break point where the wood siding starts. So above 8 feet on the front elevation is also wood to go along with the wood T&G. And then just a little bit of context here. This was kind of the original place that we started looking at the design back in October. Some of the context, I mentioned previously that the original inspiration was a project, the Gamble House in Pasadena. So you can see a number of architectural details and stuff. I won't spend too much time on that. And really what I wanted to do was give a little bit of Yountville context and kind of took a couple of three photos of some existing homes that I felt had some similarities or some architectural features that we can see in this house. So on the bottom right here, I should have, let me get my controls here. All right, so you can start seeing some of the prairie style windows that are being used, which is exactly what we're also proposing, where you have more of an unobstructed clear glass at the base, but then it has the mullions at the top. You know, this is done in a slightly different way, but it still has a little bit wider presence. So what we're proposing on the columns is something around 14 inches. So it's not just a spindly 4x4 or 6x6. So I think this is another good example of how it provides some weight at the entry porch and some definition. And then also you can see how the house here has multiple steps up. The porch is a little bit raised. The proposed house is 30 inches above grade, and that was done to limit the depth of the basement, but it also is a very traditional move that we see, and there's some similar context here. There's corbels on this side, and when it comes to the downspouts, this particular home has the chains. We're going with the traditional leader heads. Kind of moving here, this is I would call this more of a arts and crafts, where you have some of the inset tile and the stucco, something that's kind of just a little bit eclectic in a really nicely well done manner. You see some variations on this home with the stone. Again, a kind of a heavier presence at the entry porch, giving it kind of that arts and craftsman style that I would say is these are somewhat representative of the direction that we were heading. And then let me, so when I'll clear the screen here. So one of the exhibits that we provided staff was, I know that the question about materials and stuff was asked. And so what we did was we actually broke down the percentages of masonry versus the rest of the vertical facade of the homes and stuff. So when I looked at the front entry here, we're sitting at 11.9% as the use of masonry relative to the rest of the vertical facade. So that does not account for the roof at the top. On the west elevation, we chose to keep this open. I felt that because it's a small home, it's probably not only aesthetically more pleasing, in my opinion, but also from a functional standpoint. We're only allowed 200 square foot of exemption for the carport, and that doesn't quite work for a single car garage. And so when you think about just parking a car and opening up the door, we really couldn't afford to enclose this. And so we're seeing through to the masonry. So the red is all materials that are not masonry. The light olive green is the masonry. So we did that for all four sides. You know, the east elevation dramatically changed. We're sitting at 2.4% of masonry. So it's really just making sure that we don't stop the masonry on a corner, that we're wrapping it around, treating it like it's it's not veneer, it's a full masonry bricks, but just detailing that in an appropriate manner. We did look at also the rear elevation. We felt like keeping the wood coming around to the back element was important. The masonry that's used in the back elevation is just a continuation of coming around the carport. So always nice to kind of dye the masonry into a inside corner. And so that's the reason for bringing it around. I'm not sure if you had a chance to review the narrative that we put together, but there was an extensive response to some of the questions and concerns. So I'd be happy to go into detail if you have any further questions on that.
Thank you, Jared, for the presentation. I'll pass it on to the board members to see if they have any questions. Starting member Cook, do you have any questions of the applicant or the architect? You're still muted. Oh, there we go.
Jared, did you have an answer for us about the escape hatch on the front porch?
Yeah, so the 2 bedrooms downstairs, there's a code that's required to have 10% of natural light, and then there's a requirement for 1/20th of the square footage for ventilation. And so there's 3 ways out of the downstairs, as you mentioned, towards the back, a day well, of course the stairs that lead down to the basement, and then this hydraulic roof hatch. And so you know, you would open up the window, you would go up onto the sill, and then there's a series of concrete steps that you can go up to push the hatch open. And it has, like I said, hydraulic, so it helps counterweight the weight of the unit. So if I don't know how you would regulate furniture and stuff, that's never come up before, but that's how the homeowners and stuff would live. So they know that there's a hatch there. I'm not sure how we could regulate that one.
Well, I mean, I think what I would comment is that, you know, we're law-abiding citizens. If it's not allowed, it's not allowed. And I think the rear of the yard is where I think we'd be outside. I'm not you know, I had viewed that deck as we'd go out there having a glass of wine, but you know, having dinner out on the street is probably not something we're going to need to do. So, you know, if it's not allowed, it's not allowed. That's okay. That's okay by me.
Well, from a building code standpoint, I have to have that. So the sill height of the window that's providing the natural light is above 44 inches, and so it doesn't qualify as an egress window. So this is something that I have to put in order to comply with the building code.
Okay, so there's no real way to monitor the actual ability of somebody to get out that hatch if somebody puts furniture on it. Okay. That was my only question, I believe.
Member Pina, any questions?
Just wanted to clarify in my own mind, so I know that we have the brick portions of it correct, Jared. So it is coming across on the lower level, across the sliding glass doors and into the entry door, and then around the side where the carport is, correct?
Correct. So I don't know if you can still see the image on the screen, but
I was just kind of comparing that to yours, but no, I can't, but that's fine.
okay.
And then wraps around the back portion to the door that's back in the back area as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, it wraps around to the powder room. So another way of saying it is, if I leave the living room and that wall adjacent to the powder room, that's where the masonry starts, and then it wraps around to that southeast corner of the building.
So the upper level on the west side is wood. Is that correct?
The entire upper level is wood.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make it clear in my own mind. And we did not see the letter that you wrote. So yeah, so we're not privy to that at this point, at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Pina. Question for me. So in this revised design, previously there was a standalone garage type structure.
Yes, it was detached garage.
So that has been removed?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's no longer part of it. So
another way of saying it is it's been merged with the main residence. So the carport has shifted to underneath of the master bedroom in order to provide the support and integrate those columns.
Got it. And that originally was covered in the brick. So that's another sort of reduction, if you say.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And then so the 12% that you're calculating, so what we're seeing essentially in terms of the removal of the brick, it was really just that east facing side of the house. Otherwise my understanding is it's relatively the same amount.
No,
because I'm looking at the old renderings and I'm doing a little bit of side by side here. So, and I in particular, the angle from the south west of the house, you mentioned that there was a trim wrapping around the house, but that, I'm not sure that was brick. Do you have a, so can you pull up your renderings again? Sorry, it's helpful to get I don't know if you can do that.
Whose screen are we?
We're still on, I don't know, Daniel, does Jared still have control to share his screen?
Yeah, Jared, if you just go down and hit the green button again, you should be able to share your screen again.
All right. Are we talking about the southwest?
Yeah, this one, yeah. So from this angle, can you point to where you've made adjustments?
Absolutely, yes. So everything in here, this was all of that was brick.
I see.
That's been removed.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. Now I can see it. Yeah. So it's now more of a pedestal or platform or foundational element.
I mean, traditionally brick is meant to, and stone is meant to ground the building, kind of plant it, so that we also just for transparency, we did look at brick out here, and that was removed. So it's just the top extension of the basement. The concrete's exposed just like a regular foundation.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. I don't have any other questions at this time. And I think we've already established there is no public comment, but I will open for public comment if there is any. And there is none, so I'll close that. So I will pass back to the board. Member Pena, do you have any thoughts or follow-up questions of staff or the applicant at this time?
I don't have any questions. I still have some concerns about the brick exposure on the lower level, given the fact that we had the discussions at the last meeting, and that there's no other property in that immediate neighborhood that has that much brick on it. But I do appreciate the revision of the designs. I think it's lovely. I really feel like you've done a great job as far as addressing our concerns, just with the exception of the exterior portion of the brick. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Pena. Member Cook, any thoughts or questions?
I'm on the same page with Lynn that our current Old Town Historic Design Guidelines say that brick or stone, when used, is encouraged as an accent feature rather than predominant building material. And it, from the front facade, which is what we see, or if you're just, even if you're just looking at the front and not seeing it down the carport, I still think that's a heavy use of brick. Our new guidelines that we're just about ready to accept still stays with that standard to meet the general plan that natural brick or stone is allowed as an accent material only. So to me, an accent material would be the alcove where the front door is, and maybe a little bit on each side, but not on the other side of the sliders and not all the way down the garage wall. So I'm still have a problem with all that, the heaviness of that brick, but otherwise I'm okay with the revisions to the design.
Thank you, Member Cook. Both of those comments and observations resonate with me. I did have a question for staff about precedent. So clearly this is an iterative process, and the hope is always that we end up with something better with the benefit of collaboration. With the amount of brick though, are there recent examples where the board has either approved or rejected that material as going sort of exceeding the somewhat subjective description of it being an accent material versus we'll call it a core feature?
Not to my knowledge. I've only got 2 years of history here, so I'll ask Sandra if maybe she has something further back.
I would say we haven't seen this amount of brick or other stone in real recent history, and that I can date it back to about 2008, I think, when this regulation went into effect, and that was in response to 2 buildings that had very heavy use of brick, and so the idea was to minimize it. And so since that time, we haven't seen as much as we see here.
Was there, I had to recuse myself for this one, but on Talent Lane, was there not stone proposed that was then rejected and revised? And that was fairly recent, I think.
I wasn't referring to Talent Lane because that's a different zoning district, and the same regulation doesn't apply there. The use of brick or stone as an accent feature is exclusive to Old Town.
Got it. But wasn't there a revision to the amount that was used? Was that not a, I'm just looking for precedent, that's all. I realize that zones are different, but
So is that 2 Talent Lane or 5 Talent Lane?
5 Talent Lane.
5. Give me one
I think there was
second.
some stone that came back for the front of the garage.
Oh, right.
And I think we cut that back a bit.
You're right. That was, I think that was a full 100% facade brick garage that was reduced in scope. You're right. And it's interesting because that's not even a district that's subject to this standard.
But we felt it was too heavy.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, my comment on it is I think the dilemma here is that we're, we seem to have retained the architectural style that was causing some question about conforming to Old Town standards. So this obviously inspired green and green architectural style, which had a stone bottom, wood top. It's been reduced, but obviously with the intent of retaining some of the authentic elements of that particular architectural style. So the question is, to what degree is this architectural style in keeping with the design styles of Old Town? And the brick element is being central to that architectural style ultimately becomes central to the question. So that's just sort of my musing and my observation. So I don't have any further comment. I guess I do have a question for the architect, not to belabor the point. I mean, did you explore, given this was one of the criteria, did you explore a version that reduced it even further? Was that ever on the table? Because we did highlight 3 concerns, and one of them really was that adherence to this particular architectural style was not really reflected in the neighborhood, but the brick was really the standout feature. So I'm curious if there was ever a consideration of an even more streamlined use of the material.
Absolutely. We've between the time that we came to you and what's in front of you, I think we've gone through 3 different versions, and I think one of the, just looking at percentages and stuff, I mean, when if kind of the threshold is like 3 to 1 or something, if we're under 25% of the materials on the front facade, that's we feel like these are really, by introducing the wood above the doors and stuff, these are essentially like vertical columns on the facade, very limited. Most of them are in 3 to 4 foot widths because it's broken up with the doors and the columns and stuff. So yes, multiple versions were looked at. Probably the biggest impact was the east elevation. So as you're heading towards the west, through conversations with the planning and staff, that was definitely one that you could see as you approach the house. And we felt that had to be removed.
I just was, and if you look at Jared's rendering right now, I mean, those are 3 or 4 foot strips by 8 feet high. I mean, on the size house that we're talking here, I just wonder when you cruise by, after you cruise by the Monstrositor's house in Washington there, that I think would take most of your attention to, I mean, those are it's like 30 square foot of brick, right? I mean, to think that's, if we look at the house, I mean, all the pink is not brick. I don't know how that, I understand if the stone wrapping around the carport, which there'll be a car in there most of the time. And I think the challenge there was Jared couldn't figure out where to dye the stone. And I don't think many people on the street are going to see that stone. But I mean, this is the front face of the house. To think that that's the dominant feature of stone. And when you look at a lot of houses around, let's face it, there's houses that are all stone in the neck of the woods. I mean, and 11.9% masonry, that's of the whole thing. But if you look at the front here, I mean, the house is so small. We're talking like it might be that total, the front of the house there, being this house is so small, that footprint, this might be like 30 square foot of stone. I don't know. I just think cruising by to think I almost think that we've done these really expensive renderings, which I don't know. I'm sure that's not part of the approval process, is to do these $1,000 renderings that I've done about 10 of now. Where if we just put the plans together, like Jared showed it right here, I'm wondering if the feelings towards the house would be the same. Because I think I've spent $10,000 on these pretty renderings to hurt our position. Because if you look at what Jared's put on the screen here, and save all these real fancy renderings that have cost a fortune to do, because we just want to make sure that the house comes out and you know, give you guys the best input. But we're talking like 30 square feet of stone, and I mean, the driveway, to think that someone's going to look in there and see that, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to catch somebody's attention, or the house isn't going to feel like it fits in. And you know, the challenge Jared has is where to end it. If you stop it on the carport, where does he dye that stone away so it just doesn't look awkward, right? But I mean, gosh, I just think if you look at what's on the screen right now, how can that dominant feature be stone? There's barely any stone, and I think what's hurting us is these 3D renderings that we shouldn't even have paid the money to put in front of y'all, to be honest with you, because we should have just provided a rendering like Jared's got on the screen right now. And once again, you know, I've tried to do things the right way, and I feel like in a few cases here, it's bitten me. But you know, I'd ask you just to please consider that what we're showing you right here. And you know, is someone going to cruise by and look inside the carport? And if you know, we're okay with that carport not having that stuff. I just think it's going to look funny because you got to dye the stone now into something that Jared was challenged to do. And you know, even with that carport that probably consists of more stone than the stuff on the front of the house, we're still only 11.9%. But I mean, I just asked you to look this rendering in front of you on the screen to say if that house looks like a stone house to y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, my opinion is that it's really on the cusp. It's the wraparound nature of the brick inside the carport area and that particular southwest angle that obviously is maximizing. I do agree that looking at the house head on doesn't produce the same type of effect as the 3/4 view. I think that's a fair statement, and that the majority of the front facing element is that traditional wood pattern. So I think it's a fair point. The renderings are really critical. So as much as I appreciate the situation, it would be very difficult to even render a decision without any sort of visual. So for what that's worth. Okay, I will turn it over to see if anybody is prepared to make a motion at this time.
Well, I would be willing to make a motion. I don't know if we want to put it up for discussion of the architect or not first, but I would propose accepting the design with the elimination of the brick along the along the west side elevation of the garage, except for a small wraparound. I think it's very visible as an open carport, so I would make a motion. Is that something that can be done like that, Sandra? That kind of motion? Okay.
Can you clarify what the proposal is, Sandra, how that would manifest?
So it'd be a motion to accept the design with an additional condition that the brick on this elevation, top west elevation, is removed, and with the return around the corner.
Exactly.
Okay, is there a second? I think when you were muted, but there was a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, there are 2 votes in favor, 1 without. So the motion to accept the design as presented with a proposed adjustment is approved. And with that, assuming there's no further comment, we'll proceed to the next agenda item.
Thank you all. We appreciate your time and effort on this project, and you won't be disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Chair Zagorczyk, as you invite back in the other two, I need to be put in the waiting room for 8 Forester Lane due to proximity.
Understood. Thank you, Member Cook. You are.
Okay, let me just get everybody back in who's supposed to be here. Give me 1 second.
All right.
On this one, the architect is going to call in, so he should be in the meeting.
I don't see anyone in the waiting room yet. That's a phone number.
Okay, let me quickly check my emails to see if he's out. No, so I guess we will proceed.
Okay, welcome back, members Jordan and Miller. We missed you. Unfortunately, we are without Member Cook, but we are good to proceed with the staff presentation. At this point, have the applicants joined as well yet?
The property owner is not going to attend the meeting. We are expecting Richard Sly, the architect.
Okay. So at this point, it sounds like we should proceed. Or
give me 1 second. I'm sorry.
no problem.
Let me see if I can quickly reach him and find out why he's not here. I can't find it, so I guess we'll just have to proceed. Okay, I am sorry for the delay. So this project before you is an interior remodel that triggers exterior design modifications that are subject to design review. And most of these changes are minor in nature, just slight adjustments in window and door openings. And I'll go ahead and describe each of those for you, going elevation by elevation. May we have the next slide, please? We'll go one more, actually, and we can go back to the floor plans if you'd like to view them. So these are hand-drawn drawings, and they're not showing as crisp here, but you do have copies in your packet that you can view. I'm going to start on the bottom, which is the north elevation, and work my way up from there. And what you see is on the left side are the existing elevations, and the right side are proposed. And so the north elevation on the ground level, the applicant is seeking to install 2 new single-panel French doors, one of which replaces a window. And on the second floor, the proposal is to add a large 263 square foot balcony that has a glass barrier, a new Nana door, and a single panel French door. And staff was concerned with the privacy impact of the second floor changes, and we've included a proposed condition of approval that the balcony and the doors be removed from this scope of work. Moving on to the west elevation, which is the middle row on the left. And on the ground floor, the applicant proposes installing another Nana door. And on the second floor, the proposal has changed in response to staff's recommendation to remove the balcony. And that's because this impacts egress from the master bedroom. And so on the right side, you see the proposed condition, which is a window that sits above the bed that doesn't meet that California Building Code requirement for egress. And the left side shows existing. There are two windows that are bedded up together. And the applicant is now proposing to separate those so that they're on either side of the master bed that is on the other side of this elevation here. Moving on to the east elevation, which are the right two renderings on this, on the middle row. And on the ground floor, the applicant would relocate the door from the west side of the front porch to the south side, which is a little unusual because you don't see it when you're facing the building, but it's there in proximity to the entry. And the purpose of this is to allow better circulation and furniture layout in the living room so that you don't enter straight into it, you enter more into a hallway. And also proposed is a new window where that front door is removed to try to maintain some level of symmetry at the front porch. And on the second floor, the applicant would remove a window above the front porch. On the south elevation, you see a window increasing in size at the stairwell from about 20 square feet to 53 square feet, and then increasing or doubling in size at the master bathroom. And staff finds that most of the exterior modifications meet the standards of the design ordinance, and there are just two exceptions that are noted in the staff report. The first I've already raised for your attention, and that's the second floor balcony and the new doors that are on the north elevation, and that's the elevation that faces the park and abuts the backyard to the west. And given the elevated location of this balcony and the amount of both window and balcony barrier transparency to the park and the nearby residents, the fact that it overlooks the park in the foreground and a Redwood Drive residence more in the distance, and it's immediately adjacent to that backyard to the west. And my last comment is that we've received the 5 letters of opposition from residents in the neighborhood specifically to these 2 elements. And 2 of those letters are from adjacent neighbors. Staff is of the opinion that the project will impact privacy in a way that's contrary to the provisions of the town ordinance. And as you know, we've included a proposed condition that the balcony and the doors be removed from this elevation and replaced with windows. And the applicant's architect has indicated to me that that the owner accepts these terms. And so they will seek to replace the small existing 3 windows that are on this elevation in the bottom left drawing, and replace that with 1 larger window of roughly the same size overall. And so it would be reducing total window area from about 29 square feet to 24 square feet in a 6x4 window. And that is how they'd like to address that elevation. That's the only other concern is with the new large window at the stairwell, shown on the top screen on the right-hand side. Because again, there's the potential for privacy intrusion, and this time to the neighbor to the south. However, staff finds that a balance of factors weigh in favor of allowing this proposed window, and there are a number of reasons. One is there is a very deep setback on the south side elevation. It's over 25 feet to property line. This elevation doesn't look into a rear yard, but more into a side yard. And the window is located in a stairwell rather than a room. And so the privacy impacts are expected to be lessened, being that you pass through the stairwell rather than spending time in it. And we haven't received any letters of opposition to this specific element of the design. So staff supports this project as modified with the proposed conditions of approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Sandra. We'll go around and see if anyone has any questions, starting with Member Miller. Any questions of staff? And mute.
Thank you, Chair Zagorczyk. I do not think I have any questions that are pertinent to the staff report.
Thank you. Vice Chair Miller, I should have said. I apologize. It's been a while. Member Jordan, do you have any questions of staff? It should be on the bottom left mute button.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think the staff did a really good job, and I'm in agreement with this compromise. Eliminating the deck and changing the window configuration seems like a very fair solution to the neighbors' concerns.
Thank you, Member Jordan. Member Pina, any questions of staff?
Yes, I have a couple questions. In your discussions with the owner, did they give reasons why they're looking to increase the stairwell window? Was it just added light or just expansion of the stairwell? Or did they just not comment on that at all?
They haven't addressed it specifically, but my assumption is just for added light in the stairwell area.
And then so the master bathroom, which would be on the south side of the house, they're looking to expand that window on that side. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that is the window that overlooks the backyard or the side yard of 10 Forester, correct?
Correct, it's the side yard.
Okay. Looking at photos of that property, it looks like maybe the side yard is used as part of the backyard as well, but I just wanted to clarify that. And then there was an mention of eye level, and I just wanted to clarify that. Oh, reduce the size of the master bedroom and the master bathroom windows and situated eye level. So are they going to be raised as well? Is that what so they're going to be conforming? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's good. That's all I needed. Thanks.
Yeah, I just had one clarifying question. So so with the removal of the balcony that was the staff's issue, so is it now just an awning or an overhang that's there? It's hard to see from the rendering. I was just more curious. Or unless it's not, yeah, unless we're not actually seeing the rendering. This is what it used to look like, and this is actually the balcony. It's very sort of two-dimensional.
So balcony was a new addition, but it didn't change the roof overhang.
Okay.
So you still have it's an uncovered, it would have been an uncovered balcony. It's just retaining the original roof line.
So I guess I'm not clear. So by removing the balcony, we see the 4 master bedroom windows. What's immediately below that? Is it the roof line or a?
Let's see if we can go back to, or let me just pull out my rendering. So you're talking about the north elevation or the west elevation?
I'm looking at the
North.
It's not labeled, so I can't.
So where does it fall on the page?
On the bottom right.
Bottom right. So the bottom one, that's the north elevation. You see the chimney is there, so we are
Yes.
on the same page as to that elevation. So to the left where the Nana doors are located, that's actually the living room. The French door closest to the chimney would have been the egress from the master bedroom. With that no longer provided, we default now to the existing elevation. We have to go up a row and all the way over to the left, which shows the 2 windows that will be retained but separated. And those provide adequate egress.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yep. I see. So this is okay. Okay. Thank you. I have no other questions. Now, it doesn't appear that the applicant or the architect have made it.
Although Dan just reached out to the architect who will be joining shortly. I believe there were technical difficulties.
Understood. Such as the day and age. So I guess I have one more question while we wait. Is so was it in between? No, actually, I withdraw my question. Never mind.
I have a question. Sandra, you indicated that the applicant and architect had discussed a proposed solution that is in lieu of the balcony and nano wall. But that's not indicated here. Is that correct?
No, they have not provided drawings for that, but what it would do is, looking at the drawing on the left-hand side of the drawing page, the elevations page, you see 3 individual windows. Those amount to 29 square feet. That applicants would like to combine it into one window of 6 by 4 for a 24 square foot window. And while we don't have a rendering or a drawing of it, I think that's really consistent with what's existing, and I have no problem with that.
And the ground floor would stay the same?
As proposed. So it would have the 2 French doors. In place of the 1 window.
I'm seeing the proposed shows just a single door instead of the window. Or,
Right. It's showing 2 doors instead of the window.
okay.
On the north elevation left-hand side, there's a window closer to the porch. But on the north elevation proposed, you see the 2 French doors off the living room. And you actually catch a glimpse of the front door off of the porch.
Right. I think of single doors as not being French doors.
Oh, it's a single panel. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
French in the term that it opens outward rather than sliding.
Okay, single light doors.
All right. So in the interest of time and moving along, because we are to have one more item after this, does anyone have, now it looks like I see a phone call joining. I'm going to assume that is Dan, the architect, or not Dan, but
Richard.
Richard, sorry. Does anyone have, just to save Richard the time and knowing he's doesn't have the benefit of visuals, does anyone have any questions of the architect? Thank you for joining, Richard, by the way. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Sure. Member Pina, Vice Chair Miller, Member Jordan, any questions from the architect? So heads are shaking, Richard, just so that you know. And I also have no questions. So there are no other members from the public here. So I don't believe there is any public comment other than the letters that have been submitted and noted, and obviously adjustments have been subsequently made. So I will turn it back to the board to see if anyone wants to make a motion at this time. Absent that, I will proceed to make a motion to accept the revised proposal as agreed to by staff, given the changes, provided that the new renderings are provided and to the satisfaction of staff, given the criteria that they have laid out. Is there a second?
I would correct that and say not renderings, but elevations that compart with the description that we were given.
Fair enough. So I'll revise my motion, say I make a motion to proceed with the staff recommended changes, provided that the elevations meet staff's approval at a later time. Is there a second?
Do we need to clarify that there is going to be an additional proposal coming forward? Or are we just approving these without the balcony, without the nano door on the second floor on the north side, and just approving it as such that way And then they will have to come forward and present the additional possible changes. I'm just trying to clarify this in my.
I was trying to, for the sake of expediency, given that the applicant and the architect had accepted staff's recommendation and their concerns, and that staff has concluded that their proposed changes would alleviate the neighbor concerns, that we would provide conditional approval, and that if staff were satisfied that the elevations met staff's requirement, that they could go ahead and approve it without having to come back to the board a month later.
Okay. Is that sufficient, Sandra?
Correct.
All right, I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor? Okay.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Let it be noted. So we'll proceed as such. Thank you.
Project is approved. Thank you, Richard.
Okay.
Okay, and that brings us on to our third agenda item. And from, we've had a lot of recusals, so I will now not assume that anyone doesn't need to be recused. Is anyone at this point within the boundary in question? Sounds like not. Thank you. And it looks like we have additional folks joining us, the applicant, potentially architect, and other members. So for the benefit of the applicant and any others, just a quick reminder on the process. Hopefully you can hear me. So we will hear staff's presentation. We'll have questions of staff, at which point then we'll have questions for the applicant and the architect. So I would just request the applicant and the architect to stay muted until I call upon you, just so that we can move forward in the right sequence. And with that, is there any public comment?
There is public comment for this item.
Yes.
I will go ahead and read it into the record now.
Thank you.
It is from Glenn Matsuhara at 1869 Columbard Way. Dear members of the ZDRB, I own the house located at 1869 Columbard Way, which is located on the same block as the applicant's property. My house is also the same floor plan as the applicant's. I'm supportive of the applicant's request, as I understand firsthand the challenges of that area of the house. The space is not functional, creates maintenance problems, and can be a security issue. I also agree that this area should be fully enclosed and incorporated into the house. The 54 square feet in question is in the form of an alcove within the rectangular footprint of the building area. This area does not protrude into any existing open space of the lot. Therefore, by enclosing the alcove and making the space usable and addressing other maintenance and safety concerns, will not impact usable existing open space and will not impact neighboring properties. In summary, I believe the ZDRB should make the recommended findings of planning staff and approve the applicant's request. Sincerely, Glenn Matsuhara. And that is the only public comment that we've received for this item. So I will launch into the staff report.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. The final item for the board's review tonight is a variance request to exceed floor area ratio by enclosing approximately 54 square feet of space in an alcove-like area that is causing nuisance conditions at 1905 Columbard Way. You can see here on the screen on the left, this is the existing floor plan of this model of residences in the vintage HOA development. And on the right is the proposed enclosure and incorporation of that space. 1905 Columbard Way is part of the vintage HOA development. It's one of 13 Model 3 homes with this same alcove configuration. It has an existing floor area ratio of 0.31, and approval of this addition would bring the overall floor area ratio for the parcel to 0.32. And since the master plan for this development doesn't list an approved FAR on the plan, per the municipal code, it defaults back to 0.25, even though as built, it has a higher FAR. And so that's the reason for this variance request, bringing it to 0.31 to 0.32. You can see the alcove in question here at the left. It's located along the southern side of the property and is surrounded by the residence on 3 sides. Access to the alcove is provided by 2 doors. One here is out of the picture to the right that open onto the alcove from separate rooms within the residence. Windows look out onto the alcove and are intended to provide more light to the interior of the residence. However, and as you can see here, due to the close proximity of homes created by the reduced setbacks that were approved for this development, this alcove is dark and damp and really doesn't achieve its intended function. Residents of this model of home report that mold is a constant problem in this alcove, which you can see here, and I can attest to. It was visible during an inspection just last week. Residents have also reported that this dark alcove at night could potentially prove to be a safety concern, as it could shield a prowler or burglar from view from the street. And also there are no neighboring windows that look down onto this space either. For a little history, there was a interesting situation back in 2001 when some, but not all, of the open space in this HOA was allotted to the townhomes for purposes of floor area ratio by the then acting planning director. And that was about 2.7 acres that were allotted to these townhomes that allowed them to increase their floor area ratio and consequently development footprint. Not all this open space was allotted, however. There's remaining 1.4 acres, but even if we were to allot this to the remaining residences, it still wouldn't be enough to approve this application without a variance. So that's just a little bit of history behind this development. The 54 square feet in question here really represents a de minimis addition to the individual parcel and overall development, and could also create an opportunity to remedy a non-functional space that exhibits nuisance conditions. For these reasons, staff has drafted findings that may support the variance, and those are provided in the staff report. But ultimately that determination is up to the board if they believe that the findings can be made. So with that, I will turn it over to the board for staff questions.
Thank you, Daniel. We'll start as I like to in random order. Member Cook, do you have any questions of staff?
No, I do not. Thank you.
You, Member Jordan, any questions of staff?
My only question is, if this was approved, is there any chance for creating a situation where they don't have appropriate legal egress from the bedroom or from the dining room? Is there a chance that something is being created that would be a hazard down the road?
No, there's adequate egress out the back through the sliding doors. There's also windows that meet the fire code requirement, as well as, of course, the front door. And so that's not a concern.
Okay, so the bedroom still has, it's hard to tell from the drawing, but the bedroom still has legal safe egress post remodel, is what you're saying?
That's correct, and it would be confirmed by our building official.
Okay, of course. All right, thank you. That was my only concern.
Thank you, Member Jordan. Member Pena, any questions of staff? Okay, I didn't hear you, but your lips said no questions of staff. Okay, thank you. And Member Miller, any questions?
I have one quick question, and that is, there were a couple references to a situation where mold is created. And I see that picture on the right, and I'm no mycology expert, but it looks like moss to me. Are there other conditions in this alcove that are creating mold that we're not seeing, or is this moss being referred to as mold?
I think you're right. This is maybe lichen or mold or moss, and it might not be mold. You're correct. That's just okay. Let's call it a term of art.
Okay. That was my only question, other than the one that Member Jordan asked.
Thank you. So I do have one clarification. So the FAR calculation, and really where I'm going for here is establishing precedent. So for the Oak Circle developments, for example, how exactly is the FAR calculated? Is it still the FAR based on lot size and structure, or is it a broader calculation given the nature of the development? I need to understand a little bit better.
It's a little bit of both. So the FAR is something that would be approved during the master development plan process for communities like the Vintage HOA. However, they still do sit on individual parcels that give them individual FARs.
Understood. So is the question here about and remind me, so by adding the 54 square feet, what is the current FAR and what would it go to?
It's currently at 0.31 and it would go to 0.32. Okay.
And the limit of FAR for this property is 0.31? Is that?
Technically it's 0.25, but since as built with the master development plan, it was approved for as built. So 0.31 is the FAR, but for future development, it is held to that 0.25 standard.
Understood. So if all things being equal, if it were being built today, it would be held at 0.25, not at the current, the 0.31 is grandfathered in.
Let me share a little bit more information. This was developed as a master plan. So we're looking at the, and I forget the number, that say 100 single family homes and 50 townhomes. And it's looked at in its entirety. So we know that some of the townhomes are developed to an FAR of 50, 60, or 70%. The homes themselves might be anywhere from 30 to 40%. They're all individually, they each have their individual FAR as part of this master plan. And one of the reasons that they are granted a higher FAR is because there are different housing types in the forms of the single family home and the townhomes, but also the large amount of open space that is provided in a project like this. And so the way the code is set up is that the FAR is determined at the time of approval, and these are all much higher than that 25%, but there's the default number. So what that default number means is that for any of the master plan projects in town, there's really little to no opportunity for a small addition.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously these were built several decades ago prior to today's FAR requirements. Okay.
Is there any concern about the precedent that this sets for the 13 other homes that have the same plan?
Yes, in that it would likely be afforded to them as well, based on the same findings, but it would only apply to those 13 homes of this model.
And if in the case that all 13 came forward with that addition, would that compromise the overall master plan in any way?
No, it really would be a de minimis addition to the footprint and to the FAR, so it wouldn't compromise the overall master plan.
Okay.
Yeah. Building on what Member or Vice Chair Miller said, if there was a way to, the concern is always the precedent. So any approval would need to be phrased very precisely in the context of the situation to avoid creating a precedent where every house that has an alcove anywhere in Yountville suddenly becomes subjected to FAR changes, or houses start getting built with alcoves because the word on the street is you can fill it in later, if you know what I'm getting at.
And that is in the findings, it does limit it to just the 13 Model 3 homes of the Vintage HOA.
Okay, I have no other questions of staff. At this time, if the applicant or architect wanted to come forward and share any additional thoughts, that'll give the board a chance to ask questions of either party. So over to you. It looks like Jason unmuted. Did you want to go?
Yes, sir. I would like to thank Daniel. The staff report he provided was very detail oriented and gave me a little bit more information about the development itself. It is a safety concern because this property itself is elevated above the property that's next door to them. So there are no windows along that side, but not only that, but they're even down below further. So getting any direct view into that alcove would be minimal, if any view would be at all, if someone was to try and break in or gain access through that alcove. I do know that there was moss. I believe that the owner said at one point she found some mold, but I can't remember for sure on that piece of it. But it is a concern that is a very damp and moist area also. And it is next to the bedroom. So there is a door to the right of the picture on the left that has direct access into the bedroom itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or presentations from the applicant or architect?
Yeah, I don't think Mom wants to say anything. Mom, do you want to say anything?
No, I'm good.
Thank you, though, for listening to everything.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Likewise, thank you. Are there any questions from the board to the architect or the applicant, starting with Member Cook? Any questions?
No.
Member Jordan?
No, none for me.
Member Pena?
No.
Vice Chair Miller, any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, that will close that question period. And I don't believe there are any other members of the public at this point who want to contribute. So we will open and close that and proceed with commentary from the board. We'll do it in reverse order from last time. Vice Chair Miller, do you have any thoughts you want to share?
My experience as an interior designer says that the interior of the proposed changes is much more livable and a much better plan overall. I find it curious why the plan was designed, the original plan was designed the way that it was. So I think I would be in favor of approving this.
Thank you, Vice Chair Miller. Member Pena, any thoughts or comments?
I agree with you, Member Miller, and I think that I visited the property and saw the location of this and feel like it's much, much better to have it enclosed than in its present condition.
Okay, Member Jordan, thank you. Comments?
Yeah, the infill, from what I'm seeing, represents only a little over 3% of the entire building, so it's pretty minor. The other thing that I think is in favor of the project is the fact that it's not visible from the street. It's really just a functional utility, higher utility move, and I'm in favor of it. I think it's a smart idea.
Okay, thank you, Member Jordan. Member Cook, any comment?
Yes, I feel the same, that this is one of those situations that is a perfect reason to grant a variance. There are extraordinary circumstances. This is a very odd space, and this is the reason that we make the variances and the findings. I agree with all the findings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Cook. Yeah, my additional commentary just reflects what I said earlier, is just making sure that we can be really specific with the language, because precedents are very iterative. By establishing a precedent, we're much closer to another type of precedent and so on. So I would encourage there to be very specific language around the variance in this instance, to avoid creating one step closer to the ultimately loopholes that we want to avoid in the future. But I agree with my peers on the board that these cases are good to examine and on a case-by-case basis, and that's exactly why we're here, to make sure that there are checks and balances. So with that, does anyone have a motion they would like to put forth?
I will. I would move that we approve the changes as indicated in the proposal, and that it is also indicated that this is a precedent that only translates to other properties within this master plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The motion is approved. And thank you very much. With that, I believe that takes us to the end of our agenda because item number 4 was withdrawn, I believe.
Sandra was going to make some comments about that, perhaps.
I can give you an update just so you're aware of what the situation is and what you're likely to see for this property in the future. So as you know from the staff report, this is a legal non-conforming garage, and it's legal non-conforming because it sits on the west side property line. And a legal non-conforming structure can be used in its current location, and maintenance and repairs that are necessary to keep it in sound condition are permitted. And if the applicant had simply been seeking to maintain the structure in its current condition, it would not have come before you. The reason that the item was on the agenda is because the applicant was seeking to make improvements to the roof line that changed the aesthetic and triggered design review. So the request to withdraw means that the applicant can go ahead and conduct regular maintenance on the structure, provided that it retains its current design aesthetic, and that means without changing the shape of the roof line. It means that the walls can be rebuilt because they're exhibiting extensive dry rot, and the walls can be changed to the stucco, and the roof can be changed to a standing seam metal roof because this is all considered maintenance that is allowed by the code. I understand from the applicant and my discussions with them that they're more comfortable with this outcome because of the uncertainty as to whether a portion of the garage would have needed to have been removed, which essentially makes it unusable, and then the proposed condition for relocating the shared property line. And I can go more into some of the history related to the original house and those the garage if you'd like, but that's just to let you know that the applicant will probably be moving forward with a request similar to the one you see tonight. It just won't need to come before you because it's simple maintenance of an existing legal non-conforming garage.
So my question was, what is the code that allows him to have to be able to replace every structural item, every structural post, every load-bearing post in there and not have to upgrade it? That makes no sense.
I share your concern. It is because the structure, because that is all considered maintenance to maintain a non-conforming structure. You can replace dry rotted elements, and that's qualified, of course, by the fact that it can't change in its existing form. If he was raising the roof line or otherwise increasing the area of the building or doing anything else, it would trigger a use permit to do those changes and anything structural related to that. And so that's the clarification or the distinction.
What about the fact that he never took off the 102 square feet that he was required to and signed the agreement to take it off? That isn't being addressed either.
No, so that is an old agreement, and the agreement didn't have a penalty provision. If he were to breach the contract, it would mean that he occupancy for the house would be revoked or something of that nature. And so when he breached the agreement in 2004, the town had 4 years to enforce that agreement, and it's no longer valid, essentially. If it had come before the ZDRB, it could have been an interpretation for you as to whether that was fair or not, whether that should be removed, or what the decision was. But now that the application is withdrawn, it's essentially moot.
It kind of teaches us not to grant things, allowances or things based on that they say they will do it, what they will do later, you know, that they will meet their obligations and allow a use permit, they'll just do it later. It just kind of teaches us a hard-earned lesson.
I have to say too, looking back to the legislative record in 1999 to 2004, it was really, really not very clear. And there are a number of things that question whether the 4-1 vote to approve the House really included this requirement that it should be removed. For some reason, mysteriously, 4 years later, it's included in this agreement. I just can't retrace the trail, unfortunately. But you know, when I'm looking at it too, it's hard for me to imagine that the deciding bodies back then would vote in favor of removing half of a garage so that it's not workable or usable as a garage, because parking is so important. So, so I'm confused. Basically.
It was a poor decision at the time, but it was agreed upon based on the handwritten letter. Yeah.
Okay. Based on the letter, yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious, now that we have a letter of record from the neighbor about the encroachment, is there any kind of obligation that the town has or anyone has to do something about that? Or is that something that neighbor has to pursue on their own through legal matter, through legal, you know, in a legal manner?
The applicant has a right to keep the fence in its location because it's been there for years. So by the terms of law, he's developed a prescriptive easement. And so yes, to enforce that, it would be seeking a right. The owner would have to pursue that in court. Of course, if he had brought the design review application before you, an applicant can give away their rights that they might otherwise have to get an approval like design review. And so there was the nexus there to relocate the fence because we could make the findings as to the nexus and the proportionality. But absent that, it would be a suit of law, yes. It was a messy project.
It was time consuming too. I put a lot of work in it. Yeah, I bet it was hard. It had layers and layers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. But I thought it, you know, Member Cook reached out to me today, and I think it is important that you know some of that history and what the applicant's intentions are, because I think you would be a little baffled if you saw it be constructed and wonder why it didn't come back before you.
Yes. So are they required to take down the little shed, the little plastic covering that they have for a car?
Yes, I'm going to do that with them because it's not an approved temporary structure. Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Sandra. Those are all my questions.
I have one question not related to 1950 Mount. Is there a reason why we're not getting minutes included in our agendas now of the previous meeting?
Trouble staying on top of them. We're down to a staff of 2 and the workload doesn't allow it. So we'll get it to you in the future.
Just curious, no pressure. I understand the situation, but I was just curious.
Any other questions on the topic? With no other questions, would somebody like to make a motion to conclude?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting of Tuesday, March 9th, 2021.
Second. Second, all in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.